Hey everybody, Aaron Blaise here, and I am back to talk to you a little bit about my new animated short, Snow Bear. Now, Snow Bear is a film that I just completed animating. I spent the last 2.5 years creating it. I spent quite a bit of time leading up to that point in pre-production, trying to come up with the look and the designs for everything. And as animators, really, we need to sit down and we need to draw every single frame of film, every movement, every expression, everything that goes in to these films needs to be drawn by hand. And to do that, you need to do an incredible amount of work to prepare for it and research. And that's how I approach every project that I work on, including Snow Bear. So that being said, the way that I started Snow Bear was just that. I started with research. I knew I wanted to do a story that took place in the Arctic, in the cold, where it's empty and it's frigid and lonely, which is one of the main emotions that I try to get across in this story. I wanted to tell a story about a lonely polar bear living in the Arctic, and he makes a snow bear to keep himself company. Well, I kind of have the idea of that, but I really wanted it to feel authentic. And so that's where I go to research. I read every book that I could find regarding the Arctic and snow and polar bears. I watched every video I could find. I wasn't able to go to the Arctic, but I did the next best thing. I tried to find every video, watch every film, read every book, and I researched and researched and researched. One of the other things I was able to do was I went to the San Diego Zoo in California, and they have a polar bear exhibit there. And it was there that I was able to observe polar bears. This video gave me at least enough information I could start with. And one of the really distinctive things about polar bears is their fluidity. They're long, they're sleek. You can see their necks are really long. Polar bears are actually considered marine mammals. They spend almost all of their lifetime out on the ice pack, out in the open sea, hunting seals, their favorite food. And so I wanted to take that thing that makes polar bears, because there's 8 different species of bears in the world. And so what makes a polar bear a polar bear? It's not a panda bear, it's not a grizzly bear, it's a polar bear. And so I wanted to find those traits. And like I said, one of those things that really makes a polar bear distinct is that it's sleek, it's long, it's fluid. It flows through the water. They're really great swimmers. And so I wanted to take that idea and create something that was fluid and sleek. So I started to draw, and I started thinking about that fluid flow through the body. This is where I really wanted to kind of get my bearings. And polar bears really do have this nice fluid shape to their body. You can see this really organic kind of flow. And like a lot of other bears, especially the larger bears, polar bears, as a matter of fact, are the largest carnivores, the largest land carnivores on the planet. So they're huge animals. And so, but they're also, like I said, very fluid. So I wanted to find this shape coming through. Now, one of the things that's very polar bear-esque is the very shallow forehead. So they have, the line in profile really flows right from the top of the head, tiny little brow ridge right here, to a break in the nose, and then you have a nose right here. Kind of a short muzzle right there. So there's that muzzle. And the ears tend to be small, down a little bit from the top of the head. The ears are a little smaller. You got to think about when you're in the Arctic and you have things like appendages like ears and lips and things like that. They tend to, they're a little bit smaller because you don't want them to freeze. They're going to get cold. And they have this beard, this fur that comes off their chin. And that's one of the things I really loved in the look of them, is this sleekness through their body, where they're smooth on top and then this dangly heavy fur coming off on the bottom, like so. And they have these little eyes right below the bridge of their nose. Cheekbones up here, very heavy jaw, right there. And all this fur coming down off the musculature of the neck. You can see right there. A little bit of a protrusion on the end of the snout where the canine teeth are, black lips. That's another thing about polar bears. Their fur is pretty much clear. It's not really that it's white, it's just clear. It's like fiber optics. The sun shines on it and it sends the warmth of the light right through the fibers of the fur. Right down to the polar bear's black skin. Polar bears are actually black. When you look at their skin, they're black, and it soaks up that heat. They're very, very efficient at retaining heat. So here you can see that long, slender neck, a little break there behind the skull where the head connects to the neck. Big, muscular arms, front legs that come down like so. Just like that with a wrist right there. Once again, more fur coming off of here. Shoulder right there. Let's bring that other leg right back here. Actually, I might even make that leg a little bigger. There, see that? Now, I'm going to pull this. I'm actually going to extend his hips, his back end, out even further. Way back. And this is the thing. No, one of the things about drawing animals or drawing anything is yes, you want to be able to draw it correctly, but a lot of times it's knowing when you're not drawing it correctly. And here, in this case, I was drawing him a little short. So here I want that fluid feel coming back right there into that back end. Look at that nice fluid shape. That's what we're looking for in a polar bear, with all that fur dangling off the bottom. See that long shape. And here, as the plane changes in the hips, see how the hip sticks up above the shoulders and the back? There's a hip right here. This is the pelvic plane, the top of the pelvis right there. And the hips, let's connect into the thigh and the knee and ultimately into those back feet. And more big fur. Just like that. Look at that. All that fur hanging off of there. Keeping them warm. Now, polar bears are very opportunistic. You got to think about, where do they live? They live in the Arctic. There's not much up there. So anything that moves, anything they can find, they're going to go after it and they're going to eat it. So, which makes them one of the more dangerous animals in the world. But not because they're awful or they're mean. They live in a really harsh place. And so this is how they've adapted in order to get by. Okay? So, here we go here. And we'll get that other leg in here. Now that's a realistic polar bear. And I learned all this through research, through understanding, reading, watching video, drawing from the video, really, and doing my anatomy lessons and studies that I've been doing since I was a young boy. Really understanding, what it means to be a polar bear. Then from there, I didn't want to draw a realistic polar bear. Now, my designs tend to be on the realistic side. Coming from Disney, Some of the Disney films are more pushed, some of them are less pushed. My tendencies tend to fall in the more naturalistic kind of I always call it a kind of a naturalistic caricature. It's pushed, it's caricatured, but it still falls in that kind of Bambi world. And that's what I ended up trying to do with my design of my polar bear for Snow Bear. So once I had this in my head, I had all of this anatomy and how they were built and all of that. Then it came time to start caricaturing. What do I want to do to make it appealing for this film? And so that's when I started doing this. I started thinking about what can I pull away? What can I push? What do I want to accentuate in order to get expression? And one of the things is expression, trying to get human expression on this bear's face. We have eyebrows. That's one of our big traits on humans that help us communicate expression. When I furrow my brow, I'm angry. When I open my brow, I'm surprised, and those sorts of things. And that's what I want to be able to convey on my bear's face. And so I started with that. So let's just draw his head. So now I wanted to think, okay, I want him to feel like a real polar bear. I want it to feel believable that it's a polar bear, a cartoon polar bear, but I also want to get expression. Now, one of the things that makes a polar bear, like we were drawing earlier, is the fact that that brow, the bridge of the nose, is so high. There's very little forehead. So I made myself be sure that there's just a small forehead here. Now, what does that do? It brings the eyes and the brow down, and it makes it a little more difficult sometimes to create clear expression. But those are the parameters that I was trying to give myself. But it still worked out okay. So I'm thinking in shapes right now. Thinking this muzzle shape is kind of this cone, half cone kind of shape on his face. There's that kind of pushed out shape to the muzzle there because of the canines. There's a break in the nose because of the nasal opening in the skull. You'll hear me talk about real world anatomy as if I'm talking about a real bear, but I'm applying those things to my cartoon bear because I want it to feel believable. So I'm still thinking about real world anatomy and applying it to my cartoon bear. But I can push things. Like here, I wanted to give him a slightly heavier lower jaw. Like so. Let me erase some of this out of here so you can see it a little more clearly. Here's those eyebrows. I can play with those eyebrows and give them a bit more of a brow up here. Already, even without eyes, you can see there's kind of a friendly feel there because I've added these eyebrows. Here, I've got the fur coming off the bottom of the chin, and I can use that to create flow. Like here, I want to follow this line, and coming off the back of the skull here, maybe we have the neck coming down like this. Maybe he's turning his head so I can bring the other side of the neck around here. Like so. Maybe his ears are perked up. See how low the ears are? Back here. Now, let's get into that eye. The eye, I want to push the size of the eye just a little bit. I want to get in there and get some expression. So I do, I'll create a little heavier line on top to indicate eyelash. Maybe a little eyelid indicated there. Little lines under the eyes to age him up a little bit. Like so. Little sprinkles coming off the nose to indicate, maybe where he could wrinkle his nose, have a little fur coming out of there. All of these, I want that eye to feel like it's sitting inside that socket. To give it real world kind of believability on the anatomy. And then here, an iris with maybe a highlight on it. right there. Now, polar bears don't have much whites to their eyes like we do, but I added extra, I wanted those whites to show so that we can get clear expression, like so. And those are some of the things that I added for the expression on him. And here, I created this little line coming back so I could feel, and right here, a little mass of muscle and fur that helps anchor the head. And it gives us a little bit of a jawline, gives him a little strength in his jawline, and helps me determine where to draw that fur coming off the top of the head. And also, I wanted a little bit of reality with the nose. So bears have a very distinctive nose. Comes down. There's a bit of a slit right here on the side. And you have a nostril. This slit down the side like so. A little bit of a wrinkle underneath here. And this feeds down, coming down to the mouth. And this comes back. That slit goes back in like so. Now that gets a little bit complex. So I want to be sure that I could simplify that. So one of the things I made sure to do was let's just focus on the main shape. What is the shape of that nose? Well, it's shaped like this. Here's the center line of it. Sits on the muzzle like so. And then if I was up close enough, I could add nostrils, which I did. So there's a nice simple nose like so. So there's a shot of what his face might look like, kind of a neutral expression. But that was the character. Once again, you can see it's not a realistic bear, but it's not super cartoony either. This is my version, my Disney version, having spent 21 years working at Disney. And if we were to draw his full body, and I always started, the other thing too is I think about shapes. I think about what are those simple shapes to start with. And that's how I start with him. So I can make him feel as real as I want, but I can put him in as human a pose as I want as well. Now watch how loose I'm going to be with this. Have him kind of just reclining over on his side. Maybe he's looking off to over here. Look how loose I am. You want to be able to think about your character in simple shapes. There's his foot there, maybe a foot here. Just like so. Think about the flatness of the ground, his weight. Okay? So that once I have something scribbled in like that, I can just knock that back. Now that I have a form there, and this is the thing, when you think about simple shapes, then you can repeat those shapes in different views and come up with different angles on the body, different expressions, just like I'm going to do here. There's that break in the nose. There's certain things that I'll remember, like that break in the nose that keeps it consistent. Heavy jaw. Just like that. A little bit of a brow ridge right here. The other brow ridge is like that. Now maybe I want to give him like a little bit of a content look to his expression. Maybe his eyes are kind of droopy. He's happy. He's a little content. Looking off into the horizon. Contemplating life. And over the course of the entire film, making the film, and drawing him over and over and over, his look becomes refined. He develops, he grows. The bear that I was drawing at the beginning of the film is not exactly the bear that I ended up drawing at the end. But you can still tell they're the same bear. So all it takes is just getting that first little bit down, that rough pose, and then I can add my details and make my pretty drawing. I always call it the pretty drawing. Don't be afraid to make rough drawings. You don't have to go in there right away and make that pretty drawing. Okay? I'm going to push those shoulders up a little bit. Maybe pull his shoulders down here a little bit. So that fur off of his chest, we'll pull that meat of his forearm down a little. There we go. Now, one of the things about a bear's paw is they've got all 5 fingers right across. So what I want to do first is draw that shape. And I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. With a little claw. Polar bear claws aren't overly huge, not like a grizzly bear. They're very furry. Very furry paws. You just rough it in just like so. There you can see we've got this nice little pose with him because I'm thinking about that fluidity and the simple shapes. And it all starts with research. That's where you really have to start. So often, young artists, they want to just dive right in without having done that proper amount of research. You got to sit and you got to learn. You got to discipline yourself to really sit down and do the homework to learn how these, whatever it is that you're doing, how it's put together, how it ticks, what makes a polar bear, or whatever you're trying to create. Go. Just like that. So that when you do that, you can really sit down and just draw your character from any angle. You can draw any expression, and you can have a shorthand to it. You can do it quickly. I can sit here and I can go, okay, I know my bear's anatomy. So what if I want him looking up and I want his mouth open? And I want him kind of yelling, ah! I know his jaw is connected here. And I start, like I said, with with this shorthand, this very simple way of drawing, focusing on shape. Because then you can always go back and add your details. But this is their structure. This is where it really comes together. Like so. So you'll be able to draw your character any way you want to draw them if you do that research and you start thinking about simple shapes. How do you turn those shapes in space? And that's how I came up with this guy. So I challenge you to go back, and if you want to draw bears, draw bears. If you want to draw cats, or whatever you want to draw caricatured airplanes. But go back and do the research and do the things, understand the shapes, understand the anatomy, understand the physiology and how things move. And when you understand that, it really ekes its way, it makes its way back into your work and makes you create better imagery and create better animation. Okay? So, research, simple shapes, get in there and have some fun. Thanks a lot. Talk to you later.